I need you to hear this. You are still you, Simon. You are still the same son who I love to tease and who your father depends on for just about everything. And you're the same brother who always compliments his sister on her food, even when it sucks. But you get to exhale now, Simon. You get to be more than you have been in a very long time. You deserve everything you want. This quote is meant to be the resounding climax of Jennifer Gardner's monologue as the mother of a teenage son who has just come out to her as being gay in the 2018 American romantic comedy film Love, Simon. The movie was a milestone because it marked one of the first times, if not the first time, that a mainstream movie for general release specifically marketed to a teen and young adult audience featured a positive portrayal of a queer romantic storyline and a somewhat realistic depiction of what it is like for a high school teenager to come out to friends and family. As a queer person, it was an incredible and an emotional experience to get to see a movie that I was not sure I would get to see in my life. It was an opportunity to celebrate how far that acceptance of the queer community has come, at least as far as mainstream media is concerned. That such a movie was not only made, but seen and turned into a critical box office success. I teared up through most of Jennifer Gardner's monologue and joined in the round of applause in the theater once the movie was over. The final credits began to roll. But for me, the most important and even more historic part came when Hulu debuted the web television series Love, Victor a few months later. My response to Love, Victor was that it felt like the writers had been a fly on the wall to the conversation about all the things I wish they had done in Love, Simon. Because, as wonderful and momentous of an achievement as Love, Simon was, the problem was that there were several things that had to be assumed to be true to get the happy, feel-good guy gets the guy ending that Simon receives by the end of the movie. The reality was that the easiest way to tell Simon's coming out story was to have Simon be a white, upper middle class teenager living in the suburbs in a stable two-parent household. I have always had a problem with the portrayal of coming out stories. There is a well-intentioned desire to glorify and romanticize them to show those of us in the queer community that it is okay to be who we are and that there is no need for us to be ashamed. If we would just come out and be honest with ourselves, it will make everything better. I completely understand the sentiment and would love to be able to tell you that coming out is this wonderful moment when you finally get to declare to yourself and the world who you are. You are instantly seen and loved and respected by friends and family. Your life is made all the better and gets easier. The birds are singing and there are rainbows and butterflies and unicorns. I so want to be the one to tell you that this is the case. It just so happens to be the case for Simon, and I am grateful that he was able to find his happy ending. But Simon's story is not always the way that things play out. Coming out is an intensely personal and contextual act. If you are lucky to have as much privilege as Simon, whether he wanted or asked for any of it, you are more likely to have a positive result, and even if you do not, it is likely that you do not have that much to lose. But what if Simon's story had been different? What if he had been a person of color? What if he had been from a family that was not well-to-do and was living paycheck to paycheck? What if he came from a deeply religious family that did not believe his sexual orientation or gender identity? What if he came from a family that was going through the midst of a divorce? What if he was not the popular kid at school who was already well liked by almost everyone? It is quite likely that Simon's story and his entire journey to the moment that he decided to come out would have looked completely different. It also makes me wonder whether or not Hollywood would have been willing to share the reality of that story. These are some of the questions that Love Victor dealt with, and they present what was, for me, a more realistic portrayal of what the decision to come out is like for many of us in the queer community. Coming out is also not something that we decide to wake up one day and just do. It is something that we find ourselves doing multiple times within each new community that we become a part of. Our minds are in a constant state of asking ourselves the question, is the risk worth the reward? We know our decision to come out about our sexual orientation or gender identity can potentially influence all our interpersonal relationships. We are aware that coming out runs the risk of us being disowned by our parents, to cause discord between family members that we have been trying so hard not to create in the first place. We are aware that coming out runs the risk of alienating and losing our friends who are not as okay with us as we might have thought, and who will all too quickly join the ranks of bullies and cyberbullies who make our lives living hell. We are aware that coming out can potentially have an effect in our workplace. We do not know if there is a fellow employee or client uncomfortable with LGBTQIA2S+ people who will put in a complaint to our supervisors that could result in us losing our jobs, even here in California. We are also aware that our decision to come out and be honest with ourselves and others about our sexual and/or romantic orientation or gender identity means that there are dozens of nameless, faceless strangers out there that we have never met and know nothing about us, who may wish physical violence and death upon us for who we are or simply our association with the queer community. We are constantly calculating and considering how and when and to whom we choose to come out to. Many of us have chosen to come out to friends, but will never come out to family or coworkers because we cannot afford the risk of potentially not having a roof over our heads or not having a way to earn a living. Many of us are afraid that the risk is too great and have made the decision that it is not worth coming out at all, as much as we may want to. Coming out is one of the most difficult things and arguably the bravest thing that we are choosing to do. It means that we are choosing to live our lives as our most authentic selves, despite all the risks that we know exist and how difficult that it may make our lives as a result. I mention all of this because it has been on my mind recently, especially since this past Friday, October 11th, was the 37th anniversary of National Coming Out Day, and October 12th was the 26th anniversary rather, of the death of Matthew Shepard. Coming Out Day was established in 1987 by psychologist Rob Eichberg and political activist Jean O'Leary as a way to, quote, create a holiday that celebrated queer identities in order to decrease stigma and homophobia. But this has also been on my mind as we come to the theme of generosity in Reverend Sherry Prudhomme's reading from the Theological Reflection for today. Within church spaces, generosity is seen as something that we as good, upstanding church folk have an obligation to do. Essentially, it is used as a litmus test for how good and upstanding we are. And the more that we are able to give, especially if it is financial, the better and more devout that we are seen in the eyes of others, hopefully the divine. The less that we are able to give, the more guilt and shame that we are made to feel because how dare we are not willing to give. But in Reverend Dr. Prudhomme's words, we hear that true generosity is how we experience our interconnectedness and the ways in which we are not isolated beings. This is the kind of generosity that those of us in the queer community are actively seeking. It is not about money for us. What we are looking for from a community is not only one that loves us and respects us for who we are, but one that lets us know that we have a safe space amid this wild and crazy world. We want to have a place where we can not only be our authentic selves, but where it is safe and secure to be those authentic selves. We want a community that is not simply okay with us being who we are. We want a community who truly and deeply loves us for who we are and is willing to take the equally bold step to say loud and proud to others that we are valid. We have inherent worth and dignity, and that we are deserving of the same rights and freedoms and protections as anyone else, and those rights and freedoms and protections deserve to be enshrined in. We want a community who will not only celebrate who we are, but will reach out to others and say to others beyond our church walls that they should be celebrating too, who should love us just as much as they love us. And if we are not there yet, if we are not at the point of being ready to come out like Simon and Victor, to have a community that will sit with us and let us know that they still love us anyway. And that same sense of safety and security will always be there from them and will never be taken away from them. That, for us, is what generosity looks like. I charge you to help demonstrate your generosity by committing yourselves to fostering and creating that safe and secure community that those of us in the queer community so desperately need, and be the ones to embody Jennifer Gardner's words to our actions. We are hungry to hear and to know that we get to exhale now. We are hungry to hear that we are still us and that we get to be more than we have been in a very long time. Most importantly, we need to know and hear that safety and security will not always be there for us, but for all the Simons and Victors that may walk through the front doors. May this be the kind of generosity that we can embody and live into on this. May it ever continue to be so. Blessed be. Amen. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. Namaste. Thank you all so much.